This happened to me a couple of years ago, and I kind of just pushed it to the back of my mind. One rainy Sunday morning, I, 23-year-old female, was parked in the alley behind the local Mexican restaurant, waiting on my husband. He was a cook there and sometimes did prep on Sundays, when we wanted to go to church. I usually parked in the alley where other employees parked, and I never really felt unsafe back there, as it was an alley shared by apartments overlooking it. Now, I've seen this sketchy-looking dude walking by before. He's white, probably late 40s, tall and very skinny and sickly. He's always given me this weird vibe, so I would always just veer away from him if I saw him. That particular Sunday morning, I was sitting in the car, waiting on my husband, messing around on my phone, when I saw the creepy dude walking down the alley. I avoid eye contact with him, but watch him out of my peripheral vision. He walks past the car, and I glance in the side view mirror and see him turn around and head right back towards the car. I look over my shoulder in time to see this creep reaching out for the door handle. I immediately push down the door lock. It locks all the doors. It was a 90s model BMW, so it didn't auto-lock while driving. It did auto-lock all the doors if you push down on the driver's side lock. So, the door locks just as he reaches for the handle. When he hears the locks, he makes eye contact with me, pulls his hand back, and laughs. Then he has this creepy grin and says, "I just wanted to say hi." I give him the awfulest eat shit and die look and say hi sarcastically. He then says, "What's wrong?" I just like the way the car looked. I'm shitting myself internally, but I keep up my tough facade, hoping to not seem intimidated. I tell him he needs to leave before I call the cops. He laughs, and he just turns and walks off. As he's walking away, I call my husband, who comes outside. The guy is gone by now, but my husband tells me that the same dude tried to steal one of their other employees' cars a few days ago. Apparently, the employee had left it running, so it would get warm. He came out, and the dude had only gotten a few feet from the original spot before he couldn't drive standard. Anyway, I never made a police report. I figured there'd be nothing they could do. This one is from a couple of years ago, and it's a short one. It was almost Christmas, and I was doing last-minute shopping at the Tuesday morning by my house. I should also note that it was late in the evening. The sun was setting. As I was walking back to my car, this older man was standing next to his van, which he had parked next to my car. He looked like Santa, all without the beard. He began approaching me and said, "Hey there, beautiful day we're having today. I want to see the puppy in my van." I immediately avoided him and walked straight towards my car, and having heard no puppy barking or anything of the sort, just made it all the more alarming. I could hear him saying, "Oh, so you're not going to say anything?" as I was shutting the door. I should have locked the doors as soon as I got in because within those few seconds, I saw him walking around the back of the car in the rearview mirror and to the driver's side of my car. It freaked me out so bad I fired up the car and sped off. I was shaking by the time I got home. Creepy old man luring me into his van. Let's not meet. So, if you've guessed it, I'm that young 21-year-old female. I dropped my fiancé off in a big city I don't know all that well. It's the capital of our small state, and I hate it because driving there is like New York City. Terrible and confusing. I have an hour-long drive home, so I decided to go get some McDonald's before I'd go. I hate eating and driving, so I park in the parking lot under the light. It's 6 p.m. but dark because of winter. I'm sitting there eating, watching YouTube, but on high alert because the area I'm in isn't fantastic. My window is down, which is now a stupid choice, I realize. Suddenly, an old man who is definitely homeless approaches me. He puts his hands up to say, "I'm not dangerous," while saying, "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise." I try to stay calm, but I watch a lot of Criminal Minds, so I'm on high alert. He comes up to the window and starts rambling. He goes on and on about how God isn't answering his prayers, how he hasn't worked in 9 months. He swears he's never done drugs. He just needs some money. I promise I'm a good man, blah blah blah. Going on and on a while, enough to spit on me with every word. I cut him off and go, "Sir, what do you need from me? How can I help?" He says, "I just need $20. "Oh, please, miss, please. I don't do drugs." Now I'm panicking because I don't have cash, so how the hell am I going to get rid of him? I don't want to make any sudden moves because he is so close to me. Then I say, "Sir, I don't have any cash, but if you go across the street to CVS, I'll drive over there and get you some cash." "Please, oh please, can I drive with you? My feet hurt so bad." He asked a few times and I continue to say, "I'm not comfortable with that, but I will go to CVS and get you cash." "Can I have $40 then?" he asked, and I say, "Sure." He makes me promise that I'll drive over there, and I say yes. So he starts walking over and I put my car into reverse and got the fuck out of there. I drove so fast and so far away all the way home. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I think he probably did do drugs. He was half falling asleep while rambling to me, and a big bag of heroin around here will cost you $25 to $30, so I'm just glad I lived. Never settle for less. If a man or woman allows for their in-laws to treat you less than what you are, and they allow them to harass you, then they're not the one for you. So many times I have told my ex how his father would make me feel uncomfortable, and he wouldn't listen to me. He'd make me hug him despite the fact that I got really bad vibes off of his father. Everyone, I believe, has what I call a small voice inside them that tells them something's wrong. For the longest time, that voice told me to break up with my ex, and I did. The first few days were hard after the breakup, but now I'm the happiest I've ever been in a long time. I don't have to worry anymore about his perverted father. I don't have to worry about my ex sexually abusing me in my sleep. That's a story for another time, and if you go through my profile, you can find it. I can't tell my family the things that have happened to me because I'm too scared to. I feel like my dad would go to jail over me because of one of those events that took place. Thank you, Reddit, for listening to my story. The best way I can cope with this is to write it out. I love to hear other people's stories, and I'm sorry for what some of my commenters went through with their in-laws or really creepy people in their life. Anyway, I'm going to edit the story a little bit and go into more detail because I realized my original post was a little bit sloppy and a little confusing, considering I didn't assign names to the characters in my post. Anyway, here we go. My ex, who I'll call John, got really creepy with me well before I broke up with him. And you can read about him in one of my other posts if you want to. But to sum it up, he would try to have sex with me while I slept. Anyway, he had a dad who was equally creepy. I mean, some of his family members wouldn't even leave their children alone with him. You know when your child has their girlfriend or boyfriend over for the night, and when you check on them to make sure they're doing anything, over PG, you knock on the door. Well, John's dad wouldn't. He'd even just bolt in the room and walk back out. I think he bolts in on us hoping that we were having sex to try to see me naked. I never understood why he'd open the door so fast and hard like that, but I think I know why. When I got close to John's other family members, they would warn me about his dad. They'd always warn me to watch what I say around him because sometimes he would think I was flirting with him. They would also tell me just how perverted he was. Someone had told me a story about John's brother's She would hardly bring the baby around the family. I never understood why until at the main end of the relationship. Apparently, John's dad had tried flirting with her and was getting too handsy with her. I also had witnessed firsthand that John's mom would play this game with him and his brother. They would play fight and she would try to grab their balls and dick. I mean, it was the most sickening thing I've ever seen. After seeing that, I sat down and thought really hard about my future with John. One of the biggest questions was, if I'd have kids, what would happen to them? I cried myself to sleep one night overthinking the situation. If I had kids, she would play that sick game with them. In other words, they'd be molested. Me and John had a fight over that game. I told him that I would never leave our children alone with his parents because I'd be afraid that they'd molest them. This is one of the biggest reasons why I left him. Anyway, I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning of our relationship, I'd sleep naked with him. But I quit soon after because, well, it sounds crazy, but I had that little voice in my head telling me that it was a bad idea. I was right, it was a bad idea. I'd wake up to my ex pulling down my pants and trying to force himself on me. This gave me creepy vibes because I was molested when I was little, and now I felt like I was getting raped. Near the end of the relationship, I was fully clothed and in bed with John. I'm a light sleeper and woke up to my ex's boyfriend's dad pulling the blankets off of me. I guess trying to sneak a peek. I panicked and froze up. I don't know what to do, so I stretched and yawned, acting like I was about to wake up, so he'd leave. And he did. It makes me wonder if he ever seen me naked, and that scares me. I still remember that moment so vividly, and I even have nightmares about it. It bothers me so much. I love John's other family members, like his uncle and aunt, but John's parents were the creepiest fucking people in the world. I'm surprised they're not in jail for sexual harassment, especially his mom, who I suspect has been playing that game where she tries to grab him and his brother since they were kids. I hope this counted as a creepy encounter. Anybody have any creepy encounters with their in-laws? A couple of years ago, I was driving along some back streets in a small town, trying to find the main road. As I turned down a street, I saw an old-looking van parked across both sides of the road up ahead. I slowed right up and came to a stop a few meters away from the van. As soon as I heard a guy jump out of the passenger side and slid the back door open, he reached in like he was grabbing something. At this point, I suddenly felt eerie and afraid and put my car into reverse. I didn't realize the car was coming up behind me, but they ended up turning out of the way as I sped backwards. Simultaneously, as soon as the guy noticed I was reversing, he slammed the back door, jumped in the passenger seat, and the van sped off. I do wonder if it was an attempted robbery. I'm not sure. At the time, I was a plater, and it absolutely terrified me. I try to avoid back streets now. This is by no means the scariest story ever, but it definitely unnerved me. Last night I drove to work and a snowstorm started up shortly after I got there. I have an hour-and-a-half commute until I can figure out a better housing situation, and I go to work late. So my parents let me use their hotel points to get a room for the night. When I go to the hotel to check in, there was a man in the lobby, but nobody else was around besides the man at the desk. My room was on the first floor and it had a sliding glass door that opened up to the courtyard. There's no reason that they should have just been outside my door. I didn't hear anything during the night or early that morning. I got very paranoid about what could have happened because I am a woman who was staying alone. But there was only one man in the lobby, and I don't recall him seeing me go into my room, so I don't think he would have known which door was mine. I'm just glad that I made sure that the door was locked, and that the shades were closed. Slight backstory. I'm a 27-year-old pre-op trans male, and still appear very effeminate. I moved back home after I finished college in December of 2016, partially to save on my own bills, but also to help my mother, who has increasingly physical, mental, and emotional challenges due to a physical disability. We discussed the situation for a few months and figured that, since it was so serious, mutually beneficial, that my moving back in was the most logical thing for me to do. After finishing college, any references? There was one week this past summer where a couple of homeless people were hanging outside in the front hallway of our apartment building. This hallway only goes into the apartment my mother and I live in, and since there's a staircase right next to it to go into the apartment above mine, and we're the only two apartments accessible from the front entrance. One night around 2 to 2:30 in the a.m., they knocked on several doors over the course of a minute or two. We, my very nocturnal mother and I, ignored them until they started banging on the door. I then walked up to the door and knocked back to fuck with them. I worked night shift and was exhausted enough to be done with the bullshit. They then immediately knocked, and after grabbing my softball bat and hiding it behind my leg, I opened the door to ask what they wanted, prepared to fight, if needed to. They said that they wanted a cigarette, and I told them that we didn't have any. I'm a smoker, but I had smoked my last cigarette a few hours prior, and hadn't gone to get a fresh pack yet. And I shut the door. They knocked again, and I told them if they didn't go away, I'd call the cops. My mother got ready for bed not long after, and when I checked around 4 a.m., they were still there. My mother was still awake, so I let her know I was going to be calling the cops. I love to say that was the end, but they ended up coming back a night or two later, banging on our door again. I didn't even bother warning them. I just called the cops this time. Luckily, they left after the cops talked to them, and I haven't seen them since. Though, when I went to leave the house the next morning, I found they'd smeared shit all over the wall right outside our apartment door. Lovely people, truly. This is my first post, so sorry for any mistakes. I moved into my apartment almost 2 years ago. I'm a 21-year-old college student living on our own, with a guard dog and cat. I haven't had any real issues until an elderly man, at least 70, moved in below me. When he first moved in, he introduced me to his wife. However, I never saw her again. He quickly moved a couch and 2 patio chairs to the unit below me to share, so they can all smoke cigarettes together. They all hung out for a while. Now only he hangs out there, as the couch is obviously an indoor couch and is now covered in mold from all the rain it's exposed to. Anyway, this man, let's call him Jim, cannot drive, so I ended up driving him to the local gas station to get cigarettes multiple times. In this process, I ended up giving Jim my phone number. He ended up asking me to take him multiple times a day and asking me for really odd favors, like buying him a dog. And I had to start saying that I cannot take him as I'm a college student with a rigorous schedule, and I'm often in class from 8:30 a.m. to 9:50 p.m. When I told him no, he started sending me texts about how I'm being inconsiderate. The text slowly got more aggressive, so naturally I blocked him. This is where the creepy encounter started happening. Jim started to wait until I would go back to my apartment complex and bang on my car window. One day, Jim opened my passenger door and sat down, and told me to take him to get cigarettes without even discussing this previously. I took him and went on a long tangent about how his son is a deputy district attorney, and that his son will get Jim out of any trouble. Jim went on discussing how he'd already discussed options regarding me with his son. I dropped him back at his apartment and ran inside. Ever since then, I've been running in and out of my apartment, hoping not to run into him. Jim began to bang on my apartment door late at night, and screamed through the door asking me to take him to get cigarettes. I continued to ignore him. A couple of days ago, Jim moved one of those single patio chairs to the bottom of the stairs where me and my neighbors live above him. He sat there almost all day, and no one could move around him. This is the only way to exit our apartment. When I went to take my dog out to use the bathroom, he said, "Are you going to take me to get cigarettes?" And when I said no, he wouldn't leave until I called the apartment landlord and managers about it. Now, yesterday morning, he knocked my apartment door and asked if I could take him to get cigarettes and asked for my phone number again because he had accidentally erased mine. He said it was an accident, but he threatened to delete my number and never talk to me again before, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't an accident. I said no, I cannot take him. Gave him my phone number, told him that I was packing and won't be back for a while, as my classes have all been moved to online classes for the rest of the semester. Jim grabbed his chest, said I was breaking his heart, and started to cry. Jim, a man at least 50 years old than me, confessed he'd fallen in love with me, and asked if he could kiss me. I said no, and began to close my door. Jim pushed my door back and said, "Are you sure?" I again said no and told him to take care and be careful during this pandemic. Jim then noted that I had added a third lock to my door where his hand was holding it open, and said, "Oh, is that for me?" I shut the door on his face and locked it. The whole time I thought all he wanted was cigarettes. This started to make more sense. Now I'm terrified to go back to my apartment. I can't be polite anymore because he's taking it the wrong way, and ignoring him isn't working because he inserts himself. I told him multiple times that his actions make me uncomfortable, and I went distant so I can focus on my coursework. I have discussed this issue with the apartment managers and the police. Nothing has come of it. I feel like my next option is to start pepper spraying, but I'm morally struggling with injuring an elderly man. I honestly have no clue what to do. This happened last year when I went on a trip to Ukraine with my mom to visit family. I was 16, and my mom and I had been out all day exploring the city. By now, it was around midnight, and we were in the metro, standing in line so we can get coins to let us down into the subway system. My mom and I were standing next to each other. I may be slightly behind her, and right behind me was an older man, barely an inch away from me. I only noticed when I felt his fingers brush up against my leg because I had shorts on. Instinctively, I stepped away from him, and he said, "You have beautiful legs." My mom noticed him and instinctively pulled me closer and in front of her. "This is my daughter." She glared at him and stepped forward a bit. He kept talking though. "Oh, those shorts are showing off her legs. Does she do sports or something?" She told him no, still holding me closely. Thankfully, the line moved up, but after that, the guy just slinked away and left. I know in Ukraine, the culture, especially with older men, surrounding women is still really behind, but that experience irked me to say the least. So my city is one that is under a state of emergency because of the whole COVID situation. The streets are fairly dead, especially this late at night. I live on a pretty busy street too. I was taking my dog out to pee around 4:30 a.m. and our backyard isn't fenced, so I basically take her out for a walk around the house. But when I got to the driveway, I saw a man on the other side of the road, just standing there, facing my direction. He was wearing all black with a hoodie and a hood up because that's the creepiest thing you can do, of course, at night. Anyway, I brushed it off and I want my dog to pee quick so I can get inside. I figured if I keep an eye on him, I'll be fine. My dog is super reactive and she didn't notice him. She was too busy sniffing out where the pee. But then the guy started snapping like over and over, snapping his fingers. Thankfully my dog was still preoccupied, but I wasn't going to wait around for this weirdo to pull anything else. So I turned around and walked back up my driveway. He's still snapping, but I swear, I hear him walking. I was not about to turn around and find out. I just booked it up the back steps and into the house. I told my roommate and we were both pretty freaked out and started checking all the windows. He was nowhere to be found, but my dog had been on guard since coming inside. She's running from the front door to the back door, If I ever get snapped at again, I'm moving out. When I was about 8 or 9, my family went to go do laundry. Pretty simple shit. What we would do usually is put our clothes in the wash or the dryer, whichever one had the longest timer, and then leave. Since my mother had 7 of us kids, remaining at the laundromat for even a spin cycle was out of the question. We were bad kids. So once the laundry was in, everyone hopped in the van except for me and my mother. My mother told me, Mr. Annon, if I don't get in the van right at this second, I'm gonna leave you right here. I should mention that it was around 10 o'clock at night, and that we were the only patrons using the facility. I told her essentially that she didn't have the stones to leave me unattended. So she got on in the van and closed the door, and started backing out. At that exact moment this happened, I see a man walking by, staring very intently at me though. The glass windows that wrapped around half the building. Once he broke the line of sight, I booked it to the van, where my brother had the sliding door open for me. Then we watched the same man do a loop around the building, and go inside the laundromat. I know for a fact that there was no other laundry in there, nor did the facility offer any extra amenities, i.e. tanning, internet, dry cleaning. He then searched the entire building looking for me, looking under tables, going in both bathrooms, while the whole family watched him from the car. Like I said, he didn't see me get in. So this happened earlier this year with this guy, Aaron. Aaron had come to my school around the middle of the year, and was pretty weird already. He gave me a weird vibe already, and I generally avoided him. There had also been rumors that he was expelled from every other school in the city, and even a bunch of others in the state. But that wasn't my business, so I didn't care and ignored it. Sadly, he was in my history class, around 30 people. He hadn't been seated at my table in the main class, and I was so happy for that. But there was an art integration that went along with the class, and that's where it got a bit weirder. So I sat at the table with my friend, Alex. Little did I know, Alex was chums with Aaron, and so Aaron sat with us. But hey, no biggie. I'm pretty social and a polite kid. At first, Aaron was pretty chill. He had a very obsessive love to Garfield, and instead of working in class, he drew comics. Hate the bitch, but they're pretty shitty Garfield-like things. I chatted with him and Alex for a while before Aaron took a bag of goldfish out. Okay, that's normal enough. He was being a normal person at first, eating them, and then he just started to crush them up and whispering things to Alex. I mean, I crush my snacks sometimes, so I can't really judge him. That is until he declared to the class that he was going to snort the goldfish. He lined up the not-so-crushed goldfish and proceeded to snort about a fourth of what he poured, before wailing in agony. I mean, he just snorted half-crushed goldfish. I'm not quite sure what happened to the rest of the class, but I moved a seat away from him for the next day. I like being with my friend Alex, but not so much Aaron. Days passed, and I started to get into slight bickers with Aaron. He had become friends with a kid who already hated my guts. Discount rip-off Pepsi. It was clear that the discount rip-off Pepsi said a bunch of trash about me to Aaron. They both seemed to hate my guts, but everyone grew to hate them too. My other friend Olivia also started to fight with Aaron. I'm not 100% on what had happened between those two, but Olivia got into fights a lot. She knew how to stand up for herself, so it wasn't anything new. Now here's where I'll mention something. I'm not a very small lady. I'm 5'7", and not what anyone would call small. I wear boots too, and that puts me at 5'8". Aaron, on the other hand, is, to put it bluntly, clearly overweight. He's twice my size and about 5'7" too. Olivia, on the other hand, is a small lady at 5'4". This isn't too important of info, but it slightly is. Fast forward the second trimester. Me and Olivia are in our class. Aaron moved to our class and sat at the table in front of us. There were 2 tables at the front of the room. one by the door and one in the back. Me and Olivia and another pal sat at the first table. It was right next to the teacher's office. Again, Aaron was right in front of us where we sat. Being behind my other pal, the rest of the class normally sat at the back of the room socializing as always. The two front tables were very close. My pal sat at the opening between the two though. In this class period, we were working on glass pieces as well, broken glass. They were large pieces and most edges were dull. If we needed to break any pieces, there were special tools in the back to use. They weren't hammers. Me and my buds were casually socializing when Aaron let out a scream. I looked up in time to see what looked like him purposely cutting his finger on glass. Others agreed that it seemed on purpose, but someone said that it looked like he was trying to break the glass shard. I immediately told him that he should go to the nurse. I said that along with a couple of insults a bit later, because he just didn't move. He sat there holding his finger at me. Olivia and the other teacher tried to tell him to go to the nurse. Things in between are still a bit of a blur, but at some point, I said something that must have stuck a nerve, and he was now in front of me and Olivia. I don't remember him moving there, but he had gone past my other friend, so now he's right in front of me. This is where things become hazy. All I remember is him shoving his bloody finger in mine and Olivia's faces. He said something when Olivia had tried to move away from his bloody finger. He tried to lunge at her. He only knocked her water bottle down onto the floor and she immediately picked it up and standing too. At this point, everyone is aware of what was going on and most people were moving to the back of the room as the teacher called the office and had Olivia move out of the room. I was the last one back, seeing him grab his hair and look dazed. He was crying and mumbling, "No, not again, things like this." We were all then moved to the gym that was next door, me again being last. I was the oldest and largest, so I felt responsible for the lives of everyone else. But as we all left, Aaron just sat on the floor, clutching his head and mumbling nonsense. Once the day had gone on further, I was pulled into the office to give my side of the story, and discovered that he was suspended. For how long was unknown. But as the year comes to an end, I suspect he was expelled. Hey guys, I want to thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please consider clicking that subscribe button and bell icon to get notifications of future videos. I try to post around 5 times a week. And if you have a story of your own you'd like to be featured on the channel, head over to my subreddit r/GenSenOfficial. If you want early access to my videos, head over to my Patreon for only $1 a month. That gets you that and also some fun perks. I've also got some merch over on my Spreadshirt. I as well offer all my videos on my podcast that can be found on all major podcast services. All the links will be located in the description field. I hope everyone's having a good night, and remember to keep it spooky.